or may not be relevant is brand awareness. One, if the customer doesn't know you exist, how can they buy from you? So it's Hello, everybody.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing good over here. I hope everybody's doing well. This is Marketing Mondays number 89. So we're happy to have you here.
Mondays 89. I actually have to share this to one other group, so hold on one second.
No problem. This being the first show of 2024, I think we kind of wanted to change up a little bit of the flow and the way that we kind of do things, which with anything you kind of evolve and grow. It doesn't mean we're not going to still take questions. If you do have any, make sure to leave them in the comments. But I did want to kind of do a talk about Eye Magnet and kind of how it got started and how, Patrick, you created this whole thing kind of with it being the new year, kind of makes us kind of look back and think about a couple different things as far as where we're at and where we're going. As well as having started a new podcast that's now available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Amazon Music to be able to hear the audio version of these. I kind of wanted to give a reintroduction, I guess, for those people as well, to kind of who you are, Patrick, and kind of what you've created and the reason that it's here. So
sure.
I think.
And by the way, if you guys are, check out those podcasts. Like, if you guys are busy working, whatever, you got your AirPods in, the beauty is you don't have to stop and watch this. You can just connect to the podcast, listen in at any time. So hopefully you guys are happy that we're doing that and you can take advantage of this more at your leisure when you have an opportunity to put in the headphones and just listen to the podcast or let it play in the background. So,
yeah. That's kind of the hope with the Amazon Music stuff too. If you have a smart device, you should just be able to ask to play Marketing Mondays with Patrick and Ronnie, and it should play. Hopefully, I'll still work on the search capabilities as far as that goes, but I think it's new year, new way to kind of get out to more people and kind of hopefully help more people that we can.
Excellent.
So with that, I kind of wanted to go back to the beginning, and at least, like I said, we're going to talk about the story of Eye Magnet. Kind of wanted to bring up that little title there. So when you were growing up, did becoming an entrepreneur ever seem like a possibility? I know for me, once I had to have a aha moment with one of our friends, Senior, who kind of mentioned to me that he'd wanted to be one his entire life. And that kind of shook me. I was like, man, I wish I would have had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit much earlier on in life. Was it something that kind of latched onto you early on, or did it kind of come to you later on?
I would say, I would say that I'm somebody that as I look back, would say I have entrepreneurial tendencies, not a hardcore entrepreneur. The reason I say that is because another person we both follow, Gary, like there's people that are wired to be an entrepreneur that they can't even imagine working for somebody else. It's like they can't even breathe thinking about actually working for somebody else. I spent over 20 years of my career working at a variety of different positions in corporate and things like that. And I enjoyed those positions. I had just gotten to a point where I kind of felt like I was beginning to be, limited to what I could do in those positions. And that's when I sort of decided to shift into owning my own company. And because I saw a need there and things like that. But I wouldn't say that I was wired to be like, from a very early age, I couldn't imagine working for anybody else. I would just say that I did exhibit things that were entrepreneurial from an early age, cutting lawns, shoveling driveways, doing things like that. And one of the things I think I remember early on that somebody was like, okay, you were kind of showing signs of that. If you guys are familiar, back when I was in school, they used to sell, and I think they still do, a gum called Bubble Yum, and it came in like 5 little cubes in a pack, essentially. And you would typically at that time buy the pack for like 25 cents. If you went to a drugstore or whatever, you'd buy the pack for 25 cents. Well, at an early age, middle school age, I started to go there and take money that I had and buy all the different flavors of bubble yum, and I would take them apart, put them in a big Ziploc, like a freezer bag, so that I had the individual cubes. And I would take that bag in my backpack to school and I would sell each individual cube for a quarter. So I was like making, 500% margin or whatever because I was selling each cube for what I was buying a pack for. And I was doing that in middle school. So I would say I definitely, between shoveling, driveways, mowing lawns, doing those type of things, and then little things like that, I would say I definitely was exhibiting entrepreneurial tendencies, but I never really assumed like, okay, I can't even imagine going to work for somebody else. I spent the first 6 years out of high school in the Navy. That's the consummate going to work for somebody else, because they own you basically. You know how it is. You were in the military.
Yep.
So, and then I left that, went to college, and then got a traditional job with a corporation. So I guess to answer your question, I wouldn't say that I was like from an early age, like, oh, I have to be an entrepreneur, but I think I was showing signs of the ability to be an entrepreneur.
No, that absolutely answers my question. I think we all kind of come across different things. I think what I'm hoping for my son, and I think you kind of have it, but you kind of step back. You've got older children, you want to show them kind of that this is a possibility, even if it's not something that they want to do specifically, but just like, hey, it's just more of an idea that's in the head of like, hey, that's something I could do, versus me. Like, obviously I'm thankful for my parents and they worked great jobs kind of growing up to give the lifestyle I had. It wasn't an entrepreneurial background and family, which is fine. It's not everybody. There's lots of them that aren't like that. So
same with my family. Neither one of my parents were entrepreneurs. They both worked for corporations, and my dad was an electrician who worked for the illuminating company, and my mom was a lab manager and worked for hospitals and medical labs her whole career. So neither one of my parents were entrepreneurs either.
Yeah. And that's obviously we all come from different backgrounds, and it's cool once you kind of meet other ones and kind of start growing. So again, this is why I wanted to kind of make it more of an idea that people to realize, like, it's not always somebody who's had this since early on, like, I'm going to just do this and kind of build this company. It kind of comes to us all as we growing up. Kind of going with what you had mentioned before, and I'm going to try to do my magic here with the cues and stuff. You're obviously a great salesman, but where did you start picking up like the technical skills that are needed for the marketing world? Like you had mentioned earlier, my guess is probably while working on F-18s, that feels like a very technical skill. And it's very, obviously being in the military as well, you work this structured plan. And I think that kind of is incorporated into a lot of us. But what type of traits and things do you feel that helped you bring you along the way, as I kind of show some of these pictures here?
Oh, cool. Yeah, that was the one I posted the other day. So I would say certainly the military and what I did in the military taught me how to, create a strategy, follow a strategy, be very precise about what I was doing, because, you're literally talking about, people's lives instead of, a marketing program. So, you really can't afford to make mistakes, if you will. So I think that definitely has stayed with me in all aspects of my life, not just the marketing side of it going forward. I feel like that, sales, I can't even really take any credit for that. I kind of tell people like I've always been good at sales, if you will. And I never really did any formalized training or anything like that. I grew up in an Italian family, so very comfortable, talking to people and things like that. And, I feel like I have a knack for like building a rapport with people quickly and things like that. But I don't really think that that's anything I learned in a book or a class or anything like that. I think that was just kind of the way I was raised and the way I was born. I do think in marketing, obviously, I did have to spend a lot of time and continue to spend a lot of time learning the nuances of how to do particular campaigns and things like that, because that's not something you can just wing. You need to kind of know what's going on. And then I think paying attention to the details, which I would definitely say harkens back to my military time, is I think what's allowed me to juggle a lot of balls and stay on top of things and make sure everything gets done in a certain way. And I definitely think the military is bleeding through in that respect for sure.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's kind of the same with me, just that structured, like I have to have a to-do list to kind of check things off. And I think that kind of stems from certain things that were ingrained in me back then.
Yeah, the first picture you showed was actually from my squadron, and the white circle around. This was my job. I was a troubleshooter on F-18. So, what our job was from the time the jet started up till the time it launched, we were there to take care of any problems that would arise and get them fixed so that they could still make the flight time. And then we would be on the catapults, which is what this is for night ops. And as the jet went into tension and went into full afterburners, they would move all the flight surfaces. And myself and another troubleshooter on the other side of the plane would be looking for anything like the flight surfaces aren't moving correctly, or there's any leaks or anything that's happening that's not supposed to be happening. And we could cancel the launch with the guy that actually ultimately does the shot. So if we give a thumbs up on both sides of the plane, they launch the plane. If we give a crossed arms, they cancel the launch and take the jet out of tension. So when you're in that sort of environment, you definitely have to learn to, I mean, you're literally, getting ready to launch a plane. So you definitely get a chance to really hone your skills on being able to rapidly go through a series of things and make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So you don't have a lot of time to do it, but that has definitely helped me. That ability to quickly ascertain what needs to be done, do it properly, and pay attention to detail so nothing's missed.
No, I think that's talking with some other people this week. I think that's a ringing thing with most military guys, is that attention to detail, to make sure that you're following through, because it's bigger than you, whether it's your client's work or you have a pilot whose life could be threatened by something you missed. And so it's definitely being a pressurized situation of making sure that you're doing everything right and correct, I think has obviously led to success in that regard. One of the people you'd mentioned too, that I think has had a big influence on both of us, is Gary Vaynerchuk. And so for you, could you describe essentially how you came into his orbit? Like what essentially kind of queued you up to think like, hey, let me check this guy out, to then finally, let me add this one in to this meeting at this past VCon where you guys were talking. You actually had shown him a picture that you had gotten made for both of you. This one here, sure. I think it spans about 12 years. I think what you said. Yep. So how did this story start? And then obviously the relationship is still there, as he kind of poked in, kind of goofed around while we were at VCon, when we randomly would run into him.
When he was still working for his dad's liquor store, the wine library, he had a podcast at the time, a video podcast at the time, where he would essentially rate wines, where he would just like taste wines and give his honest feedback on the wines. And somehow, way, shape, or form, this is back in like 2011, 2012, I'd come across some of these videos, and I enjoyed his, because his personality he still has today would come through in those wine videos, and I enjoyed it. So way back in like 2012, I had heard that he was going to be out in the area in California that I lived at, talking at a local school to their business program. And I just decided it was like a 25-minute drive. And I just decided that, hey, I'm going to go and check out his talk. And there was like 25 people in the whole room. I mean, that's before Gary was Gary. So afterwards, we got a chance to talk. And that was where that initial picture, the 2012 picture, was taken, and got along really well. Subsequently, like a year and a half later, he was on my podcast. He actually came on my podcast as a guest. And then I've spent time at VaynerMedia up in New York City working with his team, and had been welcomed up there by not just him, but other people on the team. And now, going to VCon and things like that, I've just kept in touch with him over the years. And I wouldn't say that we're good friends or anything like that. I've just we've interacted with each other over a decent number of time. And I think probably in some ways the reason maybe he appreciates that a little bit more is because, I do have that picture from 2012 before anybody knew who he was. And, now he speaks to groups of, tens of thousands of people, and everybody knows who he is, but he's still the same guy, though. I always tell people when they ask me about Gary, I'm like, whatever you think he would be like from videos, if you think he seems like a great guy, he's better in person than you. He's one of those people that when you meet him, that people always say you don't meet people that you admire, because typically you're going to end up disappointed. And, and he's one of the few people that I would say, I like him more now that we've spent time together than I did when I hadn't spent time with him.
Yeah, no, for me, it's funny because I came about finding him so late, within like even a year after I started my business, that was like, oh, who's this guy talking about entrepreneurship and just kind of living each day. And so it's cool to have stumbled into you and realize like, oh, you guys have gone way back, and just kind of the shared values and sentiments that we kind of all have together. I got to meet him when we all went to VCon, and kind of for me, it's been like that inner monologue of just kind of not wanting to say what you want to say, and just be yourself as much as you can, which has been a big inspiration and help to me. So it's just been cool to kind of watch his journey over the last couple of years. For the little bit that I've known him, is to me pales in comparison of what you've probably watched over the last few years.
But I mean, I think, like you said, I mean, he's a genuine guy. I think he's, again, he's one of those people that, as time has went by, I mean, a lot of times people can create an impression for a short period of time, and, but now, you've got, when he talks, a lot of people, I think in the beginning were thinking, okay, you went into your dad's wine business. It was already a decent business. You sort of helped grow it even more, but you already were, starting with a somewhat successful business. But now he's built so many other businesses. Now I think the gravitas, if you will, of what he says has a lot more meaning, because it's like, listen, I've done it. Like, you can't, a lot of people are out there talking and they're really loud, but it's like, when you really look at it, it's like, what have they really done? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess kind of that VaynerMedia period was very early on, like when you started Eye Magnet. I think time-wise, it was maybe you meeting him was probably a little bit before you actually kind of signed the paperwork.
VaynerMedia, Eye Magnet is going to be 9 years old this April. So that would put it at, 2015.
Okay.
And I met him in 2012. Now, I would be lying if I didn't tell you that spending time with him, talking to him, was not instrumental in me making the decision to launch Eye Magnet. I definitely think that it was, and I'd be not being truthful if I didn't say that there was some inspiration there, and that caused me to want to launch Eye Magnet.
No, that's very cool. So I guess like once you got started, obviously every new business kind of has hurdles and obstacles. Were there any for you that kind of stood out, that kind of forged the way that you would start overcoming other issues and obstacles along the way?
I think anytime somebody starts as an entrepreneur, whether they're, a window tinner that starts their own business, somebody like myself that starts an agency, I think one of the things you run into, if your business is at all successful relatively quickly, is you run out of actual personal man hours. You start out and you kind of are doing everything. You say yes to everything because you're just trying to pay the bills, and you do everything because you don't have money to make payroll and things like that. So you're just trying to survive. So you reach a point where you definitely hit a brick wall to where you literally don't have any more hours. You're already, in my case, early on working 70 to 80 hours a week. And, I just couldn't do it anymore. And I had to start relying on bringing in other people that I could then, bring into the system, show them what they needed to learn, and then entrust them to do that, which was very hard for me because I kind of felt like I had a very specific way I wanted things to do. So one of the challenges for me was to get to a point where I could actually let go of certain parts of the processes and be okay and realize that I'm never going to grow as a company as long as I feel like I have to have an iron grip on everything that's going on. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, that is one of the very first challenges they run into, is being able to bring on other people and be able to expand their business and not feel like they have to control every element of it. It was very difficult for me. But I feel like if you're actually going to grow more than just a small lifestyle business, you have to figure that out, or your business is always going to be limited.
Yeah. No, I think just as anybody starting off, you kind of, one, just in general, get spread so thin of trying to do admin, payroll, doing the work, doing the marketing. So it's definitely trying to figure out those priorities is kind of key to the whole scheme of everything. Yeah. So,
and the other thing I kind of mentioned there that I probably would say came after the learning to have bring people on was you say yes to everything because you don't want to turn down a single dollar because you're trying to survive. You're trying to build a company. You're trying to survive. I think as time goes on, you realize you can't say yes to everything. And sometimes the very best thing you could do is say no to certain things, because sometimes, something you say yes to could really like have a negative impact on everything you're doing because of how much time it takes or attention it takes or whatever. So I think that's the second thing I would say as an entrepreneur, is learning how to like get to a point where you're able to ascertain what you should say yes to and what you should say no to. And it's tough again when you're early on and you're trying to make bills and somebody's offering you money to do something, you never want to say no, but you have to learn how to sometimes that's the best thing to say.
No, that's absolutely true. I think those are the struggles for most, if not all, entrepreneurs starting off. So I guess like this kind of goes with that one. Was there a moment or a time in your business that kind of, whether it was within the first few weeks or maybe it took a year or two, when all of a sudden you could kind of sit back and realize like, I've got something here. This is, your idea has kind of become reality. Like, was there any kind of specific moments or a client or something that kind of came along that kind of made you realize like, hey, this thing is something special?
Well, I think I knew early on, even before I officially started my company, that there was a need to do digital marketing services. I mean, if you pay attention at all, typically people are telling you they need work done, but they've been burned by people or whatever. So there's definitely a need out there for people to do legitimate quality work. I feel like I started to feel like there's really something here. Matt, who still works with us, when I was able to, he had a full-time job and he started helping me out part-time. And when I was able to get to a point where I was able to say, okay, quit your full-time job. He had a wife and kids, quit your full-time job and come work for me. That's when I really felt like, okay, this is actually a business. Because prior to that, it was just me and my wife. And I knew that I could generate enough income to take care of us. Now I'm taking on a whole nother family, a guy, his wife, his kids, and I'm telling him to leave a job that he's been at for a while and come work for me. That's when I think it really hit home. Like, this is actually a company, and it's going to be more than just me, doing some marketing work.
No, that's very true. I think I've had similar things kind of hit my mind. Was there anything, at least maybe early on, that you kind of wish you might have done differently or handled in a way that, or maybe it was something where you didn't do something and it helped you grow and you realize like, hey, this didn't work out, but I realized it led me to this other thing that I liked?
I feel like our business has grown every single year. I thank God for that. I mean, it's a definite blessing from God. We've never had a year where we haven't grown, but I tend to be a little bit more conservative, not just with my own company, but even the companies that we work with. And I think that given dealing the same set of cards, and I'm sort of throwing mud on my own self with this, dealing with the same set of cards that we have, there's other people that probably could have grown the company to a larger company than what I've grown it to. But I've tended to be much more methodical, much more conservative, much more not getting in over our heads and things like that. Now that's led to steady growth over a period of, going on 9 years. But I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but I would say that it definitely is a decision I made that probably has resulted in the company not being quite as large as it could be. I'd say as far as things that I didn't do, I would say the benefit of that is that decision I made on the retrospect has alleviated a lot of stress from me. I mean, to me, if I would have went full guns and had lots of employees and lots of office space and everything like that, and had the revenue really coming in, what a lot of people don't think about is that's also, I take a personal responsibility for anybody that works for this company. So for me to have 15, 20 people working for us, that's a lot of weight on my shoulders to be like, I got to take care of these people. So one of the things I think, it's held the company back being conservative, but it's also reduced a lot of stress on me that I haven't had to think about during COVID and everything like that. I knew we were going to be fine. Where, if I had 15 employees and 2,500 square feet of office space and things like that, I would have been a lot more stressed as we went through COVID.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of business owners' kind of dilemma. Like you mentioned before, it's having those tasks that you want to delegate out, but you want to have that control and letting go and finding that balance, I think is something that a lot of business owners probably struggle with, and trying to find that right, like money's coming in, but I want to keep the staff lower. And so just kind of wrestling with that, I'm sure, is something that a lot of people will have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, going into COVID, and a lot of people might be like, wow, that's like going into COVID when we started to see what it was. I literally took and I've still continued to do this to this day. I set up basically an emergency fund for the company that if revenue went to zero, like literally zero for a period of 3 months, everybody could still get paid. All the bills could get paid, everything without a single dime coming in for 3 months. I mean, for a lot of people, that'd be like, that's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines. It could be being put to work to make more money. But for me, I slept a lot better at night knowing that. And I felt like I was taking care of my employees better by knowing that they don't have to worry that they're a paycheck away from losing their job. Like at the worst case scenario, we had a 3-month runway
to
work with,
No, I think that's security, and knowing that you have that is something that people enjoy, having that comfort and the cushion of knowing that that's there.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap with this last question. And obviously I know you, and I kind of probably know most of the answer. I got to see firsthand just your impact on the window film community when we went to the WFCT. I always mix up the letters on that one. And obviously it's probably attributed to the year that you've had, but I think just it was very cool to kind of sit back and see just people kind of pour in from everywhere, whether it's just getting a handshake, a hug, or a t-shirt that they knew that was there. What is the key to keeping those relationships in a positive light that you've had them? I think just the longevity of people knowing who you are and understanding like how good of a person you are, which I think is why the outpouring of love kind of came through this past year. But where do you feel that comes from? And what advice would you give to other people that kind of have a similar feel to kind of have those good relationships?
Well, obviously, I'm very humbled that people feel that way, and I don't take it for granted. And I think one of the reasons that, I've just always tried to be genuine. I mean, I'm a Christian, and I the old golden rule, treat people the way you would want to be treated, as simple as that sounds, I've just always tried to live that way. And I'd like to feel like people that have interacted with me don't feel like I've taken advantage of them. And I just, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm not trying to make a quick buck today and then tomorrow, I'm off and people feel like I've burned them for money or whatever. I've just never taken that tact. I've never been really focused on, like, I've always been embraced people from, even when I was working with Lumar and Vista and Formula One or 3M. I've never had adversarial relationships with other film companies or other reps. I've always tried to be like, hey, we got to do what we got to do, but we can still be friends. And I feel like just being yourself and treating people well and not feeling like, I'll leave it with this. Like I'm not trying to use, weird words or whatever, but I'm a big abundance mentality type of guy. I do not feel like for me to succeed, somebody else has to fail. So to me, that's opened me up my personality to be like, I can be friends with everybody, because for me to succeed doesn't mean that other film company has to not do well, or that other tool company, or that other marketing company for that matter. So, I mean, I definitely am humbled. I don't take it for granted. I just feel like I've tried to, you know, hopefully honor those friendships, honor those relationships by being honest and treating people the way I would want to be treated if I were in their position. And hopefully over the span of a career that, works out well for you. And I don't take anything for granted, but I always, I've had certain people, as anybody has had, that, have had this, we've had disagreements, and I've always even tried to not confront those people, but approach them at those shows and say, hey, again, not to go back to another biblical reference, but it talks in the Bible about as much as it's possible, for me, live peaceably with all men. And I've always tried to look at that like, if I'm not getting along with somebody, I want to do everything I can from my end to get along with them. They still may choose to not want to get along with me or to have an axe to grind with me or whatever. But as much as it's up to me, I want to do everything I can to have a good relationship with that person. So,
no, I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy working with you, is because of just that mentality. And it's hopefully something that we can all kind of make sure that everybody understands, whether it's our clients or whoever else it might be that's watching this. We're here to kind of hopefully help everybody. And that's kind of the core of all of this. So I guess I did say lastly with the last question, but I will leave this to you up in the air. What is your vision for Eye Magnet for the future?
I mean, I think that we're fortunate in the fact that we typically have more incoming requests than we have the ability to service. I'd like to see Eye Magnet continue to grow so that we can help more people out, because I genuinely think that we try to do a really good job and provide people with a really sound value. So my vision would be that we can just continue to grow the relationships and grow the number of people that we can work with and do solid work with. And, I feel like if we do that, if we treat people well, we provide them good value, we try to stay on top of what's happening and just do good stuff, the number of customers, the growth of the company, all those things will take care of themselves. But it comes down to individual relationships with individual clients and doing the right thing each and every day. And if you do that consistently, I've always found that the sales sort of take care of themselves. If you focus on the sales, I think it convolutes the whole thing, and you start doing things to make sales that sort of, are not, that are contrary to maybe the best thing for that relationship. So I think, to me, what I'd like to see the vision is us continue to grow with like-minded people on the team that feel the same way, so that we can take care of more people without losing any of that core DNA that's about the client, not about us just growing the business.
Yep. No, I completely agree. And that kind of puts us right at the 35-minute mark. So we will kind of wrap it up here. I hope everybody kind of enjoyed this kind of look back at how Eye Magnet came to be. And we're going to kind of stick with this kind of pattern as we move forward with doing kind of a topic for the whole episode, and then make sure we'll still answer questions, whether it's at the end of the show or if it kind of fits with what we're talking about, we'll bring it in. So I will say thank you, Patrick, for kind of sharing all that with us. And I hope to see everybody next week. And I will let you close.
Sounds great. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope everybody had a terrific holiday season and you're looking forward to an awesome 2024. Thank you for spending whatever time you do with us, whether it's with the podcast, whether it's with the live stream, whether it's watching the video later. We appreciate it. If you are getting value, let us know in the comments. It's always good for us to know that people are feeling like they're getting some value out of what we're doing. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. We really want to bring value to you. So again, if there's a way that you feel like we could change something to do that, we'd love to hear that feedback.
Completely agree. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.